I never thought a year could change everything. When I boarded that plane from Seattle to Toronto, I believed my marriage was unshakable, strong enough to withstand distance, time, and all the uncertainties life could throw at us. I believed in love, in him, in us. His name was Ethan, and for 6 years he was my home, the calm after every storm, the person who knew my heart like it was a book he had memorized cover to cover. When I got the job offer in Toronto, it felt like a dream. I had been struggling in my career as an architect, trying to prove myself in a world that rarely took women seriously. This opportunity wasn't just another step, it was everything I had worked for. Ethan had been the first to encourage me to apply. "Go for it, Em," he said one night as we sat by the window, rain trickling down the glass. "It's just a year. We can handle it." I remember smiling, trusting that tone of his. So sure, so warm, so convincing. The night before I left, we cooked dinner together. Pasta with too much garlic, wine that made us laugh, music playing low. He held me in his arms, whispering that he'd count the days until I came home. I didn't know that the countdown would eventually end with him in someone else's arms. Toronto was everything I had dreamed of. Fast-paced, bright, demanding. The first few weeks were hard, but Ethan called every night. Sometimes we fell asleep on video calls, phones resting beside us as if the connection could bridge the miles between. I would wake up to his sleepy texts. "Good morning, beautiful. Miss you more today. Can't wait to hold you." Those words were enough to keep me going, to push through the exhaustion of endless design meetings and deadlines. But as months passed, the calls became shorter. Then they became less frequent. At first, I didn't think much of it. He was busy, I told myself. He had his own work, his own life, and I didn't want to be that clingy wife who needed constant reassurance. But something in his tone changed. There was less warmth, less curiosity about my days, less laughter. One evening, when I called, I heard a woman's voice in the background, faint, like a whisper he forgot to mute. "Oh, it's just a coworker," he said quickly, a nervous chuckle following. "We're having a late meeting." My heart stuttered, but I brushed it off. I trusted him. I had to. I came home that Christmas, just for a week. I remember standing at the arrivals gate, scanning the crowd for his face. When he appeared, something inside me melted. But there was something different about him, too. He hugged me, yes, but his arms felt hesitant, like he was hugging a memory instead of a person. His kisses were quick. His eyes didn't linger. We spent that week pretending everything was fine, pretending love could be paused and resumed like a movie. But every silence between us was heavier than the one before. On Christmas Eve, while I was wrapping gifts, his phone buzzed. He was in the shower, so I glanced at the screen. A message popped up from someone named Elle. It said, "Can't wait to see you tomorrow. Miss your smile." I remember my chest tightening so much I could barely breathe. My fingers trembled as I placed the phone back exactly where it had been. When he came out, I looked at him, at the man I thought I knew, and forced a smile. I couldn't ruin Christmas. Not yet. When I flew back to Toronto after the holidays, something inside me felt broken. I tried to bury it in work. I told myself he was just being friendly, that maybe I had misunderstood. But deep down, a voice whispered the truth I didn't want to hear, that I was slowly losing him. The following months were colder, not just because of the Canadian winter, but because of the silence between us. Sometimes he wouldn't answer my calls for days. When I asked, he said he was just tired. I started to recognize that phrase as the wall he built to keep me out. By the 9th month, he had stopped saying, "I love you." I tried to come home early. I told my boss I needed a break, that my marriage needed saving. But we were in the middle of a major project, and she begged me to stay just 3 more months. 3 months. That's all I needed to fix everything, or so I thought. I returned home exactly a year after I left. The flight was long, but my heart was hopeful. I had even bought him a gift, a leather jacket he once pointed out months before I left. I wanted us to start fresh. When the taxi pulled up to our house in Seattle, everything looked the same. The small porch, the maple tree by the curb, the wind chimes I'd hung before I left. But when I opened the door, I froze. There was laughter, a woman's laughter. At first, I thought maybe his sister was visiting, or a friend. But then I saw her, standing in my kitchen, wearing my apron, cooking with ease like she had always belonged there. Her hair was tied up, and her voice carried a kind of comfort that used to be mine. Ethan came out of the hallway. When his eyes met mine, every illusion I had shattered. He didn't look surprised. He looked caught, but not guilty enough. "Emily," he said, his voice barely a whisper, "you're home early." I couldn't speak. The jacket in my hand slipped to the floor. The woman turned to look at me, startled, and for a moment, the three of us stood frozen, a triangle of silence. He finally spoke, his words clumsy and slow. This is. This is Laura. She's been staying here for a while. I meant to tell you." I don't know what hurt more, that he betrayed me or that he didn't even have the decency to hide it anymore. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. Not yet. I just nodded, turned around, and walked out. I could hear him calling after me, but I didn't stop. The air outside was freezing, and for the first time, I felt truly, painfully alone. That night, I checked into a small hotel downtown. I sat by the window, watching the rain wash over the city lights. My wedding ring felt heavy on my finger. I took it off and placed it on the nightstand. My reflection in the glass looked like a stranger, a woman who had given everything, loved with all her heart, and ended up alone anyway. The next few days were a blur. He called. He texted. He said it wasn't what it looked like, that he was confused, that he still cared about me. But every word felt hollow. When I went back to the house to pick up my things, Laura was still there, which told me all I needed to know. I packed slowly, touching every memory like a wound. The framed photo from our honeymoon, the coffee mug he bought me with "Boss Lady" written on it, the throw blanket we fought over every winter. By the time I was done, the house no longer felt like home. It felt like a museum of everything I lost. Leaving that house was the hardest thing I'd ever done. But in that pain, a strange clarity began to form. I realized that sometimes love isn't stolen from us. It just fades, and we keep pretending it's still there because we're too afraid to face the emptiness. I rented a small apartment near the lake. It wasn't much, but it was mine. At first, the silence felt unbearable. I cried until my body ached, until I couldn't tell where the pain stopped and I began. But then slowly, the world started to soften again. I got up early one morning, made coffee, and watched the sunrise. For the first time in months, I felt something like peace.